everyone. I'm Ben Tapper, the Chief Diversity and Equity Officer for the City of Indianapolis, and welcome to Let's Talk. This is a video series about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and today, let's talk Ramadan. Now, we're starting out with religious inclusion because we're a diverse workforce in an even more diverse city, and in order for this city to be everything that we believe it can be, we have to understand how to create environments and spaces in which everyone feels like they belong, regardless of what their spiritual or religious beliefs and traditions are. And to help me in that effort, I'm joined by Sarah Hindi, who's a colleague and friend of mine that works for the City County Council office. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're here today, and I'm excited to learn more about Ramadan. So to start out, can you just tell us a little bit of information about what Ramadan even is?
Yeah, of course. So Ramadan is the 9th month of the Islamic calendar, and it is a holy month observed by Muslims from all over the world. And what Ramadan is, it is a month of fasting, it is a month of prayer, and it is a month of giving. And so Muslims typically fast sunrise to sunset. And so that means no food, no water, no chewing gum. So very similar to the month of Lent, but different in terms of how it's observed and practiced.
So I've known about Ramadan for a while. We've talked about this video segment, and even now still, I just learned something new. I didn't know that y'all couldn't drink water during the month.
No water.
Just nothing from sunrise to sunset.
Yes.
Wow, that's intense. And what is the meaning behind it? Like for those that do practice and participate in Ramadan, what's the meaning of observing it?
The meaning behind observing it is, one, to cleanse the soul, and two, to also emphasize with those in our communities, but also around the world, that are less fortunate than us and that are experiencing food insecurity and hunger from around the world. And so that's the intentionality behind it. And so through the holy month of Ramadan, but also of course all year long, Muslims learn a lot about, sacrificing and self-determination and commitment during that time, especially.
Wow. And am I remembering correctly that the dates of Ramadan change year to year, similar to how Easter does for Christians?
Correct, yes. So this year, the night of Ramadan will begin March 22nd, and so fasting will be the next day, the 23rd, and it will be a month long. So usually Ramadan is either 21 days, 30 days, or 31 days based on the sighting of the moon. And then each year it's not the same time, as you mentioned, so it goes back, I believe, 2 weeks. Okay. So this year we're starting off mid-March. Next year it will start in the beginning of March.
Okay. And for employees in the workplace, colleagues, supervisors that want to be inclusive and kind of be supportive of those that might be practicing or observing Ramadan, what are the tips they need to know in order to do that well?
Yeah, there are a few different ways that you could help support your colleagues or friends or those around you who are fasting and observing the month of Ramadan. So one, which I hope people are already doing, just checking up on your colleagues, seeing how they're doing, asking how they're doing. Another way is to, provide flexibility, whether that be working hours. So some people, maybe they prefer to work. So I mentioned that fasting starts when the sun rises, and so there are 2 meals, typically during the holy month of Ramadan. Well, a lot of times, sometimes people just have 1 meal, but it depends. But suhoor, which people wake up before the sun rises to have that first meal, and then once the sun rises, it's the first prayer of that morning. And so maybe a colleague wants to start working really early in the morning and then end at an earlier time, or maybe split up their hours. So there's definitely room, if possible, to provide that flexibility. Remote work is now something that we've been doing for the last few years, but it wasn't before, and so that's also provided just a lot of flexibility during the holy month of Ramadan, which I've really appreciated. Just be mindful of, it's okay that if our colleagues are eating and drinking in front of us, it's okay, but just be mindful of having all staff, like lunches, pitch-ins, even just all-day trainings that might be very long days for your colleagues who are fasting, so being mindful of that, but also all extracurricular activities. So I'm a very social person. I love going out after work and hanging out with friends and seeing friends, or going to events throughout the city, but during Ramadan, because we break fast in the evening, I typically don't go to a lot of evening events, or even just after work, I'm more tired than usual. And so a lot of my social events during Ramadan are decrease a lot. So just being
Understandably.
mindful of your, understanding of your friends or colleagues that won't be able to go to certain events that they probably regularly attend.
Yeah, and I think that the piece in there that could really benefit everyone, which is why it's important to talk about religious inclusion, is that it might be a good idea to not have any all-day training. Supervisors, I'm looking at you. Just think about it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and honestly, like, we understand things come up. Like last year, I had to go to a conference for 4 days, and I was fasting, and it was in DC, and it was awesome. Like, I didn't want to miss it. Like, I could have not gone, but I didn't want to miss it. And so, it's again, like, we are used to observing Ramadan every month, and we know when it's coming, and we prepare for it, and we don't typically, like, nothing stops around the holy month of Ramadan. Like, we want to continue to be involved or engaged in our communities, and so, but being mindful and intentional and just thoughtful with what you're asking of your colleagues during that month, I would say. And especially, I think it's important as we talk about religious inclusion is creating safe spaces. So whether that be, a quiet room for a private prayer for your colleagues, or even when I was in school, K through 12, and I was fasting. I started fasting at a young age, around, I would say, like second grade. I think I was in second grade. And teachers, instead of going to the cafeteria with my classmates, a teacher would always have me go to the library, and then sometimes I'd cross paths with my brother who's also fasting, and we'd both be in the library. And so the library was a safe place for us in school as people were eating lunch, and sometimes they'd say, stay during recess too if you don't want to go outside and play. And so we'd hang out in the library. So it's so important to think about how we create inclusive and welcoming and safe spaces in the workplace and outside too.